Breaking news: how the Federal Bureau of Prisons tortures and kills inmates. There isn't a lot of sympathy for prisoners, but everyone is already a felon due to the 300,000 criminal laws and regulations with the force of law. Harvey Silvergate's book, 3 Felonies a Day, explains that the average person commits 3 felonies a day without knowing it. If, God forbid, you are ever persecuted and imprisoned for a crime you didn't even know about, you may want to learn what it's like to be harassed and tortured by Bureau of Prison terrorists. Former news commentator Paul Harvey reportedly said that if you want to see the lowest form of life, just wait outside prison during shift change. Some treat you like a human being, most don't. Here are a few examples. 1. Counselor Eglendorf, or was it Eglandorf? Refused to unlock the door to the unit for a sick inmate named Bobby McLean who was suffering from the heat. This was in Texas on June 1, 2015, and it was dangerously hot outside. However, although Eglendorf stood just inside the locked door, he refused to open it on the grounds that he, quote, didn't have time to turn the key. Bobby died from a stroke the next morning. 2. Then there's Houston Unit Counselor Kyle Cody who went berserk on February 1, 2016. According to witnesses, she began throwing Bibles in the trash. 3. Officer Flores was another arrogant hack who loved to pick on elderly and handicapped inmates who couldn't fight back. One day he physically attacked an elderly prisoner named Philip Gray for not getting out of the bathroom fast enough. Flores told him to quit pissing and get out, yelling in his ear 5 times, "Who the fuck do you think you are?" Mr. Gray asked the same question, "Who the fuck do you think you are?" Flores grabbed Gray and slammed him on a nearby bunk, then pressed his knee into Gray's neck and handcuffed him. Little Gutierrez, the sadistic unit manager, assisted Flores by painfully jerking Gray off the bed by the handcuffs. Mr. Gray is 64 years old, has a pacemaker, congestive heart failure, diabetes, high blood pressure and cholesterol. For his insolence he was tossed in the hole and written up for 2 violations. They also took 27 days good time, 2 months commissary, 90 days visitation, and 60 days of phone privileges. 4. Justin Morris, aka String Bean, joins the list of Hitler wannabes. According to witnesses and lawsuits, he has physically accosted several prisoners. Supposedly, he was suspended, with pay, no doubt, pending the resolution of the lawsuits. He had reportedly beat up a wheelchair-bound prisoner named Bobby Zeidel, who subsequently filed and lost a lawsuit against him. I was told that Morris had been fired from the Texas Department of Corrections for similar conduct, but, alas, the Federal Bureau of Prisons will take anyone, including worthless excuses for human beings. 5. Chaplain Willis tried to justify Richard Schutt's trivial complaints of inadequate and death-dealing medical care, no toilet seat in the chapel, and the cameras in the chapel to watch you pray. Chaplain Willis responded with the snide comment that inmates are losers who've taken from society. This is an interesting analysis by a loser who couldn't get a job anywhere else except riding a garbage truck. 6. The Dallas unit manager, M. J. Gutierrez, clearly has the short man syndrome. He loved to bully prisoners because he was bullied in school. Yet, he was too cowardly to chew anyone out without first summoning 2 staff members to protect him. He told inmates that his job was to make sure no one gets comfortable, and said, quote, "I am the most important man in your life." If you filed a complaint on him, he would move you to another unit. A real man doesn't have to prove anything by tormenting sick and elderly prisoners. And, according to 4 people who witnessed it, a unit manager isn't supposed to kiss the captain on the mouth in the middle of the courtyard. He has reportedly been written up numerous times for sexual harassment of the female staff, but the warden refuses to fire or transfer him. 7. Officer Gilbraith was a detestable and ugly hack. One day he spotted a totally blind inmate named Robert Jackman spilling salt on the dining table. Gilbraith tormented him, saying, "Hey, blind man, better watch that salt, it's bad for your eyes." 8. A female officer named Ramirez should be given a Darwinian Award for her brilliance. One day inmate Larkin Baggett was pushing Willie Lenholt in a wheelchair out of the chow hall when Officer Ramirez stopped them on the ramp for a shakedown. She groped Baggett and told him to go on and began groping Willie for any smuggled food on his body. Satisfied, she told Willie to go on, but poor Willie thought Baggett was still behind him holding the wheelchair and rolled down the steep ramp alone. He yelled out, "We're going too fast," then screamed in pain when he slammed into the railing at the bottom of the ramp. He needed 20 stitches in his lower legs. 9. Michelle O'Neill was another female corrections officer who got 5 months in prison for the alleged sexual assault of a willing prisoner. Another former BOP corrections officer from New York was imprisoned at FMC Fort Worth. He griped about Michelle's short sentence because he got 14 years for sexually assaulting a female prisoner. But under Warden Chandler, none of his staff homosexuals were ever punished for groping prisoners' genitals during shakedowns. If you complained, you went to the hole. 10. On April 3, 2016, a mailroom staff member refused to deliver a copy of the U.S. Constitution sent from the Cato Institute to inmate Paul Dunn, deeming it subversive material. 11. Officer Pittman was a former Food Services administrator under investigation for theft, falsifying documents on fire drills, and for releasing private information on staff to an inmate for filing reports that Pittman was too lazy to write. We never saw him again. 12. Officer Goatboy Power was a perfect specimen of humanity's worst. He worked at the commissary, routinely slinging your goods through the window. Sporting a white goatee that made him look like a billy goat, and just as ornery, he routinely broke chocolate bars while scanning the barcode. Reportedly, he excused his conduct with the statement that inmates don't need chocolate. 13. Officer Ralph. At some point a lesbian nurse named Stout filed a sexual harassment charge against Ralph. Later, a transgender inmate also complained of sexual harassment because Ralph kept asking him to show me your tits. Ralph was then restricted to driving the perimeter trucks until he retired with full pay. He was never fired. Instead, Nurse Stout was transferred to the women's prison in Carswell, Texas. The warden must feel more empathy for his sicko brethren than those doing their job. 14. Lieutenant Christie. According to Mike Shedd, Miss Christie, aka Lieutenant Christie, recruited a prisoner named Michael Walters to tattoo his pink slippers. Christie planned to do table dances in gay bars in his tattooed pink slippers that read, Operations Officer. On June 27, 2014, according to multiple witnesses, Lieutenant Christie defended a gay inmate who had a confrontation with blacks in the education department. The gay inmate had said to the blacks, "You are niggers and your mothers are whores and crack addicts." Christie said the same words to the blacks. This incident was allegedly witnessed by Miss Bell, who told the group of blacks she would report it. The gay inmate did not go to the hole because Lieutenant Christie, being a gay lover himself, routinely defended them. Earlier, 2 other gays named Ursula and Elton John were caught in the act and Christie refused to discipline them on the grounds that they were simply, quote, fulfilling their nature. Was Lieutenant Christie ever fired? No. Despite a stack of inmate complaints, he, or she, was merely transferred. 15. Warden Rodney Chandler was about as useless as the proverbial tit on a bull. He never did anything for prisoners, but he sure did a lot against them, like closing the tennis courts, which had provided necessary exercise, taking the microwaves out of the units, which allowed decent food from commissary to be cooked, banning the sports pages from the library due to betting, though the radios and subscription newspapers had the same news, permitting the hacks to terminate open movements on evenings and weekend, and delaying the processing of compassionate releases for sick and dying prisoners. Apart from Michelle O'Neill, Warden Chandler never disciplined any of his officers for their torts and crimes, neither the ones listed above nor the following: Officers Carter, Daniels, Green, Scott Brown, Goldsby, Lieutenant Lee, Lieutenant Buck, and Captain Benkford. Some of the lieutenants strutted the compound dressed in khaki pants and black shirt, trying to imitate tough guy FBI agents. The fact is, these pansies wouldn't last 5 minutes on the street as real cops before somebody beat them down. The mismanagement at the Federal Medical Center in Fort Worth has banned Ken Pellock's 435-page memoir, They Left No Crime Uncommitted. The reason, because it exposes the names and misconduct of 15 staff members. The BOP has refused to fire or discipline these staff members and won't allow his books inside the prison for security reasons. However, you can discover a lot more about judicial and prison terrorism in his monumental book on Amazon, They Left No Crime Uncommitted, How the Government Committed 470 Felonies to Frame 2 Men, and Why You May Be Next.
If you liked this video, give it a thumbs up and share it on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, or any social media. If you want to see lots more videos like this, hit the subscribe button. Lots more are on the way.